Hi, Angie. Welcome to the Animal Tone podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I feel, and I know that you said cosmopolitan, maybe this is a different kind of political lens, operates at the global level, but I wonder if could you apply this kind of lens even within a city, for example? So let's say you are a cosmopolitan in a city. It seems appropriate. That's always what I thought a cosmopolitan was, so someone who lived in a city. Anyway, ignore my ignorance. So you're in a city and you're a governor of a city, right? And you have to make, because cities are arguably some of the biggest contributors to climate issues and to the consumption of world resources. So they're really important places, I think, in terms of thinking about justice and whose needs are being served how. But now you could imagine the governor of a city, kind of how differently their urban agenda would be if they were tasked with not only thinking about their city, but other cities, and that they were not only tasked with thinking about their human residents, but also thinking about, other animals that move through or live in the city, how differently those policies would come to bear, right? How fundamentally different I think the city would look, how different the infrastructure would look if you thought not only about, even this idea of like human animal, there are so many different types of humans, so many different types of animals that you start to see just a different city emerging. And just to kind of go from that global scale to city scale, where I think, yeah, you could imagine overpasses for animals. You could imagine better ramps in buildings, like it becomes a lot more obvious that thinking more broadly about what an individual is or who an individual is can facilitate real world changes, even if it's not overnight, right?
Yeah. So I think that, in my own work, I've kind of moved away from thinking about questions of global justice to thinking more about domestic justice. So thinking about our relations with animals who we live with in particular. So I'm especially interested in domesticated animals and especially interested in companion animals. And at the moment, I'm kind of preoccupied with this question of like, what does a just society look like when we live with animals? Like, how should we organize our social and political world in a way that ensures that they get what they're entitled to? And so, one key question there is like, what are they entitled to? What are our current animal companions entitled to? And so, one thing I guess that I've sort of become doubtful of is the usefulness of this concept of interspecies justice. I think that part of my worry is that it suggests a kind of mutuality that does not actually exist between us and non-human animals, particularly domesticated animals, that there is some kind of reciprocal relation of justice that, we can kind of construct a just society together. And I don't, I basically have just come to doubt that that's possible. And I'm not sure what the replacement label should be, like multi-species justice, that's kind of fine as well. It doesn't suggest this kind of mutuality. But I think that, all of this is I'm kind of on a path to thinking that actually what justice requires for at the domestic level is really isn't going to be a case, but it's going to be a matter of humans really taking a step back and reflecting on our practices. Like, how did we get to where we are? What are we doing with these animals? What are these animals entitled to? Is it good for these animals to continue to be with us in the ways that they are currently?
Those are really, I think, challenging questions, because it's interesting, this idea of like multi-species and interspecies, right? Because I think sometimes when we write about these issues, we maybe use them a bit interchangeably, but they do kind of show a different way of thinking about the relationships. The one is just to multiply and say that there are many, whereas the other is saying that there is this interrelationship. And I certainly think animals, they tell us often what kind of just system they would like, right? They resist certain things, they move in particular ways, they, chomp down specific things that really give a sense of what they think they should be entitled to, which but then the other side is, I guess, our propensity to create our own stories, and two, our kind of, I guess, willingness to listen to what it is they're trying to say, and also our varied interpretations of what they're trying to say. But then that to me just says politics, right? When we have varied understandings of what we are all trying to say. But I hear I don't know. I mean, I don't know where I sit on this kind of spectrum of things myself, but I certainly do think that there is scope to listen and pay attention to them in a way that doesn't position them as commodities or things. And as soon as you start to view them as kind of individuals, or even as communities, or as beings worthy of justice, I think how we interpret their behaviors shifts fundamentally.
Yeah, and I think that, something that's important in what you said is that it's not altogether clear that we can figure out what their entitlements are on the basis of their expressed preferences, because they might have preferences which are really problematic, and we think that actually, like, no, you can't do that. Either it wouldn't be good for somebody else or it wouldn't be good for you. So just having kind of preferences or just being resistant to something isn't enough to give us a clear indication of like what a just entitlement is. And if you think about the discussion we were having about cosmopolitanism, right there we were thinking about justice as being connected to well-being. So one way of thinking about the entitlements of the other animals with whom we share our political communities is to think about, what is in their interest. And you're right, answering that question is also very difficult for us because we are not particularly good judges of what is in the interests of other animals. But nonetheless, we can start to think, okay, what is good for them? Like, what would help them to lead a good life? And I think that once we start asking those questions, it does become very difficult to think about whether we're good for them. I guess that's perhaps a different way of putting it. Like, are we always good for the other animals with whom we share our lives? And I think that, I'm more and more, skeptical of the thought that we are. I think that there's, even in our ideal case, right, even when we love them dearly, I'm not sure that it is good for them, that we're good for them.
Yeah.